In this video, we're going to show you how to install the alternator on your Toyota Tundra, located on the front portion of your engine. And with your hood open, you're going to go ahead and locate the battery on the driver's side front portion of the vehicle. We're going to use our 10mm socket on a 1/4 inch ratchet. We're going to go ahead and loosen and remove the clamping nut here. Now we did spray this down with some rust penetrant. Now loosen that. Get to remove your tool, remove that ground terminal, and set it aside. We'll use our 14mm socket on our extended ratchet. We're going to come over here. Now this pulley is just to the right of the power steering. This is our tensioner. So with our Serpentine tool on there, using our 14mm socket, we're going to push down to the left. So it's basically going counterclockwise. Go ahead and pull the belt off your other pulleys. Now that we have that belt loose, I'm just going to leave the tensioner tool on there. Tuck that belt down. And let's go ahead and remove some hardware. Now, in order to access all of the hardware on our alternator and remove the alternator, we need to remove our power steering pump. Now, there are 3 bolts holding this in place. There are 14mm bolts, and what we're going to do is we're going to use a deep socket on our ratchet, and you're going to go through the windows. The windows are these pockets or holes in the pulley itself. So if we go up roughly, rotate this pulley and go through. Let's go ahead and loosen this one. Now we do have the lower radiator hose in the way, but the hose flexes, so you don't have to panic on that. We can just simply reach down and push that out of the way a little bit as needed. And when we pull these bolts out, we're going to pull them up through the window on the front side of the pulley. There's no particular pattern on doing this. You can do the bottom one, you can do either of the tops. Reach back here, and we'll pull that bolt out. Here's one of them. The bottom one is a nut on a stud and is positioned roughly about 6 o'clock. Sometimes the nut will come out with the stud, sometimes the nut will come off without the stud. I'm going to switch over to my power tool and zip that off. Now at this point, because our nut came off and left the stud, we now need to take our pulley or our whole pump unit and pull it forward off of that stud. You might have to shift or move that belt as well, the lower radiator hose. Here it is. And I just used a pry bar to gently go ahead and persuade that out of the way. I go and drop that down. What may help to drop this down on your particular model, if you have the pressure switch, it's just over here, it's this gray connector. right over here. There's a little pinch tab on that. You could pinch that and disconnect that electrical connector. We're gonna do that. Here it is. And that'll give us a little bit more room to go ahead and push that down out of the way. Ideally, to pull out our alternator, we can go ahead and pull this stud. Now this stud here uses an inverted Torx or an E8. All right, once we get that bolt free, we're going to switch over to our power tool to zip that stud out. Across the front portion of the bumper, we're going to go ahead and remove normally the 3 10mm bolts. Ours is missing one in the middle. I'll go ahead and remove these 3. You're going to remove these 2. And if we move to the back, you're going to access the other ones. Now we're going to go ahead and remove this one here. There would normally be a middle one in this section here, but ours is broken. So we're going to remove the last one over here. Now the shield is going to drop down, so you want to hold that with one hand while you remove this bolt. Grab that shield, you can tip it back and slide it out. Now there are little hooks on the front side that help support this. Unhook those and slide that out. Now accessing our alternator from below, we have a 12mm nut here. We have a 14mm nut up there and a 14mm bolt here. I'm going to use our ratchet from down below here to break this free. Now when we remove all 3 of these here, there is some wires going to the back of the alternator we're going to have to access as well. So you want to pay attention to that. Once you get that bolt loose, we'll go ahead and switch over to our power unit here. Go ahead and remove that bolt. Go ahead and grab that bolt, spin that out, and set that aside. And grab the alternator, and we should be able to wiggle that free a little bit. I'm just going to manipulate our power steering pump off to the side over here. So we were able to take a power steering pump and finagle it so that the pulley is on the front side of our lower radiator hose. Now if you reach down here, you're going to see a rubber boot covering the power cord going to the alternator. That is a 10mm. We need to loosen and remove that. Go ahead and remove that nut and pull that cable off of that. Now if you follow the cable down, there's a 10mm bolt on the bottom of the harness itself that anchors this to the alternator itself. All right, now that we get that bolt out, separate the harness from there. I'm gonna reach up, slide the alternator off of the studs. There is one more connector on the back of the alternator. But once that alternator is off of that, off the studs, we can go ahead and position this. And there's a pinch tab on there you want to pinch and slide this over. Now with the connector disconnected from below off the back of the alternator, and we pushed our power steering pump down. It's a lot of maneuvering things back and forth to try and gain access here. But then we should be able to position our alternator to pull it up. Go ahead and take your alternator. Squeeze that down in there. With the alternator down below, we're going to go ahead and get underneath the vehicle. We're going to connect the electrical connector on the back side of it. We're then going to feed it up and put it onto this mounting stud here, and then we'll install the rest of the harness. Then we can adjust our alternator here, install our connector on the back here. You're going to feel and hear that connector lock onto the back, and then we can go ahead and adjust our alternator and push this up onto the studs. There we go. Now that we have the alternator hung, we're going to go ahead and install our bolt. Now we went ahead and ran this bolt through the wire wheel machine, and we put some anti-seize compound on there. And then go ahead and get that started. Now before we install the two nuts up top and secure these, we're going to go ahead and install the harness on the top side. That'll be easier for us to do that now. And then we'll come back and we'll tighten this down and install the two upper nuts. Now we're going to install this little 10mm bolt onto the bracket on the harness. Okay, now that we have the bolt started there, go ahead and get a ratchet on there and we'll snug that down. You want to make sure that bolt is good and snug. Grab our power wire and slide that onto the stud. Now the power wire has these tabs on there that need to line up with tabs on the alternator itself. So you have to make sure that rubber boot is pulled back and that those tabs interlock into the alternator. Go ahead and grab that 10mm nut. It can be kind of a pain because that rubber boot just naturally wants to go ahead and cover that. You can see we get that nut started on there. Let's go ahead and snug that down. Once that nut bottoms out, just give it a little bit more. Make sure that's on there good and tight. Go ahead and pop that rubber boot back over there. Here we go. Let's now install the nuts. Let's install the two nuts on the top. Okay, now that we have these started, go ahead and snug these down. Now we took our stud here and we cleaned it up and we put some anti-seize compound on it. Thread that into the hole right above the alternator. Now let's go ahead and snug that down. I have to bring the power steering pump up and over. Push that onto the stud, slide that back onto the block. There we go. Now we'll clean up these bolts on our wire wheel machine. I'm gonna feed that one in there. And then we'll feed the other one in. We just need to position that power steering pump. We'll just move that around a little bit till those bolts line up. Get them started just a couple threads. Now we have the nut for the lower stud. I'm going to go ahead and put it on the deep socket. That'll help me feed that in through the window. Line that up and get that started. Now we do want to make sure that these are good and snug. Once that nut bottoms out, and keep going a little bit more. You do want to make sure it's good and tight. I'm going to do the same for these here. We have the wiring harness over here that needs to plug in to the pressure switch here. Line that up. We're going to push that on. And you want to make sure that that's fully seated. Make sure it clicks, and you want to give it a little push, try and push it off. We have our hose here. We need to push this over, lock that in, and then we need to install this hose into this retainer that we had released earlier. So we're going to line up our belt on our pulleys. So I'm going to get them run on most of the pulleys here. You want to make sure that they're on all of the ribs. Very, very important. All right, so around the tensioner, and bring that tensioner down. We'll run our pulley up and around. With that tensioner down, we can run the belt around our pulleys. You want to make sure that the belt is fully seated between the outer portions of the pulleys, and it's fully seated inside the ribs. Now you're going to do this all the way around. You have the crankshaft, you have the power steering, you have the AC, and once you have that all set, you can go ahead and release the tensioner here and remove that. Take your front skid plate. I'm going to bring that up. We need to place it above the lower bumper shield, and we have our little J-hooks there to go into the cross member. Push them in and over. That'll support the front while we swing up the back and line this up. So we're just going to get this back bolt started here, and then get one started on the other side. Now that we have the two rear bolts started, on yours you probably have a third one in the middle. Go ahead and install that one now, and then we can move up to the front and we'll install those. All right, get that one started. Let's move to the other side. Get that one in there. With all four of these started, go ahead and run through and snug them down. Install the screws on the front side here. Gently snug these down. Now if you have all three, go ahead and install your middle one, and then the last one here. Install the ground terminal and snug that down. Get a little wiggle, make sure it's good and tight. And at that point there, you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.